Before you judge me, let me tell you everything from the beginning. What I thought was helping my mom almost ruined me, and then I discovered my brother's shocking secret. You're watching her Retaliation, and if you enjoy real, life-shocking stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. My name is Emily Parker, and I'm 28. I've always believed that family comes first, no matter what, even if it meant sacrificing my own comfort, my own peace, or my own dreams. That belief was tested like never before just 2 months ago. My mom, my rock, was suddenly rushed to the hospital, a heart complication. I could barely process it. The fear of losing her or of her facing it alone was overwhelming. I felt helpless and panicked, and I knew I had to do something immediately. I didn't have much savings at that time. Most of what I had was tied up in rent, daily expenses, and small personal goals I'd been quietly saving for. But I couldn't stand by and watch my mom struggle. After pacing my small apartment for hours and thinking through every option, I finally decided to open a credit card specifically to cover her medical bills. I chose a reputable bank with a decent limit, and the card allowed up to $5,000. I reminded myself constantly that this was for my mom and my mom only. I even put the card in a separate envelope and locked it away at home, telling myself, Emily, this is sacred, only her medical bills. Nothing else. For the next few days, I became a blur of hospital visits, insurance calls, doctor consultations, and careful budgeting. I hardly slept. Every time I held my mom's hand, feeling her pulse and seeing her frail face, I told myself I was doing the right thing. But then, one evening, as exhaustion finally nudged me into checking social media for just a few minutes of distraction, I froze. There it was, a video posted on Instagram. My younger brother, Jake Parker, and his wife, throwing their twin daughters an extravagant birthday party worth $16,000. And the centerpiece that made my stomach twist was a helicopter landing right in their backyard. I couldn't believe my eyes. The girls were laughing, running around the helicopter like it was a toy. There were fancy decorations, a live band, gourmet food, and enough gifts to fill a small warehouse. Every frame of the video screamed excess, privilege, and careless wealth. I stared at the screen, blinking, hoping it was some kind of joke or staged video. But then the caption appeared, posted by Jake himself. Thanks to Emily's card, the girl's birthday was unforgettable. My heart dropped. My card, the one I had opened just to cover Mom's hospital bills. That card barely had $300 left after paying everything the hospital demanded. I laughed, but it was bitter, hollow, almost hysterical. How could he be so careless, or worse, so cruel? The next morning I went to confront him. My hands were trembling, but I tried to keep my voice calm. Jake, really, my card. He looked at me with that irritating, smug smirk he always had. Yep, thanks to your card, Emily, he said, leaning back casually on his couch as if he'd done nothing wrong. I couldn't believe it. I chuckled, but it was more like a bark of frustration. My card has $300 left. Did you even check the name? Jake just shrugged, still grinning like he had pulled off the greatest prank of the century. At that exact moment, Mom entered the room holding a bank envelope. Her expression was anxious, guilty, and hesitant. She handed it to me, saying softly, Emily, I think you need to see this. Inside was my credit card, the one I thought was safely tucked away for her medical expenses. My stomach dropped. Someone had taken it from her paperwork, and there was no denying it. Jake had used it for that insane party. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, disbelief, sadness, all crashing into me at once. How could my own brother treat my family's money like this? How could he disrespect me and, more importantly, Mom, in such a reckless way? I sat down, stunned, replaying the video in my mind over and over. Each frame of that helicopter landing, every over-the-top decoration, each decadent dish, it was like a slap in my face. While I was struggling to pay for life, saving treatment, he was throwing money around as if it grew on trees. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, trying to steady my breathing. But even amidst the anger and disbelief, a strange clarity emerged. I couldn't react impulsively. I couldn't yell, accuse, or lose control. I had to plan. I had to find out exactly how he accessed my card, how far he had gone with it, and how much damage he had done, and then I would make sure justice was served, for now I had to wait. I had to observe, and most importantly, I had to prepare. That night, I couldn't sleep. The moment I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that helicopter hovering over my brother's backyard, the extravagant decorations, the mountains of gifts, and most of all, Jake's smug, triumphant grin. It was like my blood was boiling, and my stomach churned every time I imagined the scene. I felt trapped in a nightmare that didn't seem real, yet I knew it had happened. Every single dollar of my hard-earned money meant for my mom's medical bills had been thrown into a party of reckless indulgence. I paced my small apartment, my thoughts racing faster than my heart. I kept replaying the Instagram video in my mind. The girls laughing, running around the helicopter, the expensive gourmet food, the elaborate decorations. It was all a cruel mockery of what I was going through. I could almost hear Jake's voice in my head, smugly saying, "Thanks to Emily's card," as if he had performed some masterful trick. By morning, I knew I had to act. The first thing I did was call the bank. My hands trembled as I listened to the agent recite every transaction. There it was, multiple charges totaling over $16,000, all on the same day, all in Jake's city. My card had been maxed out completely. The reality hit me like a punch in the chest, leaving me momentarily breathless. I felt a mixture of rage, disbelief, and shame, not just for myself, but for my mom, who had trusted us both. I realized immediately that this wasn't just carelessness. It was deliberate. Jake had intentionally taken advantage of my family's trust. That thought made my anger spike even higher. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, trying to contain the storm inside me. My mind raced, how could someone I loved so much, someone who shared my childhood memories, betray us so completely? But amidst the anger, I felt something else: clarity. I couldn't confront him yet, not without a plan. I couldn't just yell or demand the money back and hope for a rational response. I needed proof, leverage, and a strategy. I needed him to feel, at least in some small way, the shock and humiliation I had felt when I saw that helicopter land. I sat down and carefully started documenting everything. Screenshots of the Instagram post, copies of the bank statements, even notes on what the captions said. I realized that if I wanted to fight back, I had to be meticulous. Every little detail could matter. I also considered contacting the bank formally to report fraudulent use, but I knew that would take time. Time I could use to build my case and plan my retaliation strategically. Later that day, I pulled my mom aside. I had to know if she had somehow unknowingly given him access to the card. I couldn't hide my anger and worry from her. She looked pale and guilty, clutching the same envelope that had held my card. "Emily, I didn't know he'd do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought I was helping him. I never imagined he'd go this far." My chest tightened. I wanted to be angry at her, but my focus was on Jake. I reminded myself that this wasn't about blaming anyone else. This was about setting things right. Over the next few days, I acted calm and composed around Jake. He continued flaunting the party on social media, completely unaware that I was building a case against him. Every post, every boisterous comment, every bragging caption fueled my determination. I realized that he had underestimated me completely. He assumed I would stay quiet, that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't care. And he was dead wrong. I started thinking about ways to make him realize his mistake. I wanted him to feel the same shock, humiliation, and frustration that I had felt. I wanted him to understand in no uncertain terms that what he had done was not only reckless but unacceptable. I considered different strategies, imagining scenarios where he would see the consequences of his arrogance. Then, while going over the bank statements again, I noticed small discrepancies. Tiny charges that didn't match the main party expenses. He had overlooked them, not paid attention to details. That sloppiness became my opening. It was proof that he had acted recklessly and that I could use it against him. At that moment, I felt a surge of empowerment. I wasn't a helpless victim anymore. I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. I began formulating a plan, piece by piece, carefully plotting my steps. I would reclaim what was mine, expose his recklessness, and ensure that he would never dare misuse my trust or my family's money again. I imagined the look on his face when he realized that for once he was outsmarted. That thought made me smile, a quiet, determined smile that filled me with a strange sense of satisfaction. This was only the beginning. The stage was set. I just had to be patient, strategic, and precise. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of control. Anger still simmered inside me, but it was now sharpened into focus. I was ready. The days following my discovery were a blur of careful planning, observation, and patience. I, Emily Parker, had never imagined I would find myself plotting against my own brother. Yet here I was, fueled by a mixture of righteous anger, betrayal, and an unyielding sense of justice. I had learned one harsh lesson. People often underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who appear kind, compliant, and forgiving. Jake had made that mistake, and it would cost him. I started with my finances. First, I froze the card. reported fraudulent charges, and worked with the bank to launch an official investigation. Every transaction he had made was meticulously documented. Screenshots of social media posts, copies of receipts, timestamps, and even casual mentions from his friends who had attended the party. All of it became part of my evidence. But I knew evidence alone wouldn't teach him the lesson I intended. I needed to hit him where it would hurt most: his ego, his sense of invincibility, and his reputation. I spent hours imagining scenarios. How could I mirror his arrogance and make him experience the same shock and humiliation that had consumed me when I first saw that helicopter? I remembered the tiny discrepancies in the charges. His carelessness, that was my opening. If I could amplify it, manipulate it, and expose it publicly, Jake would be forced to confront the consequences of his reckless indulgence. Meanwhile, I maintained the facade of the quiet, obedient sister. Around Jake, I was calm, polite, almost indifferent. He laughed, bragged, and flaunted his wealth on social media, unaware that I was quietly gathering ammunition. I watched him post stories, noting every exaggeration, every boast, every offhand remark about thanks to Emily's card. I took screenshots, saved the posts, and compiled them into a timeline of his audacity. One evening, I sat down with my mom. She was worried about how far I was willing to go, but I reassured her. "Mom, this isn't about revenge in a petty sense." I said, my voice steady. "This is about holding him accountable. He used our family's trust, and I won't let him get away with it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I understand, Emily, just be careful." That night, I began the execution of my plan. I started small. I confronted him about minor expenses he had forgotten from the party, the little oversights he had made. He laughed at first, thinking I was just being meticulous or nagging. But then I started connecting the dots, showing him evidence of every careless move he had made. The overcharges, the tiny overlooked transactions, the inconsistencies between his posts and the actual statements. Each revelation chipped away at his smug confidence. He grew defensive, then panicked, then angry, and I remained calm, composed, and deliberate. I watched as his arrogance slowly cracked, piece by piece, and it was intoxicating. I realized that this was the kind of justice I craved, not just exposing him, but making him fully comprehend the impact of his actions. Next, I leveraged social proof. I sent detailed records of the transactions paired with the social media evidence to mutual friends and family members who had attended the party. I framed it as a concern for my mother's well-being and the reckless behavior surrounding her finances. The reactions were immediate. People were shocked, some confused, and others outraged. Suddenly, Jake's bravado on social media became a liability. Everyone began questioning his ethics, his responsibility, and his respect for family. I could see it working. His carefully curated public image was crumbling. Comments trickled in, some supportive, some incredulous, and he didn't know how to respond. He sent me frantic texts, trying to deny the charges, to justify himself, to blame anyone but him. But I had anticipated every word, every excuse, every attempt to evade responsibility. I simply replied with calm precision, letting the evidence speak louder than any argument. The final move was the hardest, yet the most satisfying. I arranged a family meeting, under the guise of reconciling and discussing my mom's recovery. Jake arrived, still smug, still expecting me to forgive and forget, but I had rehearsed everything in my mind. I walked in, confident, carrying the compiled evidence, and presented it to everyone. Every transaction, every screenshot, every careless move he had made, it was laid bare. The room went silent. Jake's face turned pale, then red, then finally frozen in shock. He opened his mouth, tried to protest, but the weight of the proof was undeniable. My mom looked at him with hurt in her eyes, and for the first time, he saw the real consequences of his actions. Not just the financial impact, but the emotional betrayal. I didn't yell, I didn't shout, and I didn't cry. I let the evidence speak for me. I let him feel the humiliation, the shame, and the accountability that he had so carelessly avoided before. Watching him squirm, watching his ego crumble, was bittersweet. I didn't enjoy his suffering. I enjoyed the justice, the restoration of balance that he had disrupted. From that day forward, things changed. Jake never misused money again. He became cautious, measured, and I could see genuinely remorseful. It wasn't instant forgiveness, but the lesson was clear and indelible. And I learned something too. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits quietly, calculating, precise, until the moment it can act with impact. As for me, Emily Parker, I felt empowered. I had stood up, I had fought back, and I had reclaimed what was mine. Not just the money, but my dignity, my family's respect, and my own sense of justice. I smiled quietly to myself, knowing that sometimes the most effective revenge is not anger or chaos, but strategy, patience, and unwavering resolve. And as I walked away from that confrontation, I knew one thing for certain. I would never allow anyone, not even my own blood, to exploit my trust again. I had reclaimed control, and that control was mine forever.